In this episode, we're going to make information architecture feel like a leadership and governance topic, not a purely technical data topic, because beginners often hear the word data and assume it only matters to analysts or database specialists. In reality, most enterprises run on information, and when information decisions are inconsistent across departments, the organization loses trust in its own reports, wastes time reconciling conflicting numbers, and makes strategy decisions based on shaky ground. Information architecture, IA, is the disciplined way an enterprise defines how information is organized, defined, shared, protected, and used so that data decisions align enterprise-wide rather than being reinvented by each team. When governance incorporates IA, leaders can treat information as an enterprise asset with clear ownership, consistent meaning, and controlled access, which improves both business performance and risk management. Without it, enterprises often fall into predictable chaos where different systems disagree about what a customer is, where sensitive data is copied into unmanaged places, and where compliance obligations are missed because nobody can confidently explain where data lives. This topic matters on the exam because governance scenarios frequently involve inconsistent reporting, weak accountability for data, and risk caused by uncontrolled data flows. By the end, you should be able to explain what IA is at a high level, why it belongs in governance, and how it guides enterprise-wide data decisions without requiring you to know database commands. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A good starting point is a plain language definition of IA, because the term can sound abstract until you connect it to daily enterprise problems. IA is the set of shared rules and structures the enterprise uses to ensure information has consistent meaning, consistent quality expectations, and consistent handling across systems and teams. It includes how the enterprise defines key data concepts, how it classifies information by sensitivity, how it manages the life cycle of information from creation to retention to disposal, and how it ensures information can be shared safely and reliably. It also includes the pathways information takes as it moves between systems, because information is rarely stored in only one place. In governance, IA provides the guardrails for data decisions so that local teams do not create definitions and data copies that make enterprise reporting unreliable. Beginners often think information architecture is just file organization, but at the enterprise level, it is about making information usable and trustworthy at scale. It is also about reducing risk, because unmanaged information flows often create privacy exposure, security gaps, and compliance failures. When you understand IA as enterprise-level clarity about data meaning and handling, you can see why it is a governance responsibility. Information architecture matters because enterprises make decisions based on information, and when the information is inconsistent, the enterprise's decisions become inconsistent too. Imagine a leadership meeting where one report says customer growth is strong and another report says customer churn is rising, and nobody can explain why the numbers differ. That situation is not only frustrating, it undermines governance because leaders cannot confidently measure outcomes or manage risk. IA reduces this problem by creating shared definitions and shared expectations, so the enterprise can rely on its metrics. IA also supports operational performance, because many business processes depend on accurate data, such as billing, customer support, inventory management, and fraud detection. When data quality is poor or definitions are inconsistent, operational errors increase, and teams spend time fixing symptoms instead of improving the system. Governance cares about these effects because they influence enterprise value, cost, and risk. Beginners sometimes assume data problems are technical glitches, but many data problems are governance problems, like unclear ownership and inconsistent standards. Incorporating IA into governance makes data decisions deliberate and accountable, which improves enterprise reliability. A key beginner concept is that data decisions are governance decisions because they determine who can use information, how it can be used, and what consequences follow when it is wrong. For example, deciding what fields constitute a customer record and how customer identity is resolved across systems is a governance decision because it affects every department and every customer interaction. Deciding how sensitive information is classified is a governance decision because it affects security controls and compliance obligations. Deciding retention periods is a governance decision because it affects legal risk and operational cost. Deciding whether teams can create local copies of enterprise data is a governance decision because it affects privacy exposure and reporting consistency. These decisions have enterprise-wide impact, which is why they cannot be left entirely to local teams acting independently. Governance incorporates IA by establishing decision rights, standards, and oversight so these decisions are made consistently. Beginners should notice that none of this requires memorizing technology products. It requires understanding that information is a shared enterprise asset. When the exam asks about data issues, it is often asking whether governance has established enterprise-wide rules for data meaning and handling. To incorporate IA effectively, governance must establish shared definitions for key information concepts, because shared definitions are the foundation of alignment. Key concepts include things like customer, account, transaction, product, employee, and incident, depending on the enterprise. When different systems and departments define these concepts differently, the enterprise cannot compare performance consistently, and leaders cannot track outcomes reliably. Shared definitions are often called a common vocabulary or a business glossary, but the important point is that meaning must be consistent enterprise-wide. Governance ensures these definitions are owned, maintained, and used, because definitions drift over time as new systems and processes emerge. Ownership matters because someone must resolve disagreements and approve changes to definitions, or else every team will interpret terms in ways that benefit local goals. Governance also needs to ensure definitions are connected to reporting and measurement, because governance outcomes are often evaluated using enterprise metrics. If the metric definitions are inconsistent, governance cannot accurately assess alignment, value, or risk. Beginners may be surprised by how often enterprises struggle here, but it is one of the most common root causes of confusion and mistrust in reporting. IA incorporated into governance solves this by making meaning consistent and changes controlled. Data classification is another essential part of IA, and it is directly tied to governance priorities around risk and compliance. Data classification means categorizing information based on sensitivity and impact, such as whether information is public, internal, confidential, or highly restricted. The exact labels vary by organization, but the purpose is stable. Classification determines how information must be protected, who can access it, and how it can be shared. Without classification, teams treat all data the same, which either creates excessive friction by overprotecting everything or creates risk by underprotecting sensitive data. Governance incorporates classification by making it an enterprise standard and by ensuring it is used in decisions about access, storage, sharing, and retention. It also ensures classification supports external obligations, such as privacy requirements, because certain types of personal or financial information may require stronger controls. Beginners often assume classification is a security-only activity, but it is also an operational efficiency tool because it allows the enterprise to apply strong controls where needed and lighter controls where appropriate. When classification is consistent, compliance becomes easier because the enterprise can demonstrate that it applies controls according to data sensitivity. In exam scenarios involving uncontrolled data exposure, missing classification and inconsistent handling are common drivers, and governance actions that establish classification standards are often appropriate. Information lifecycle management is another area where IA shapes governance decisions, because information has a life cycle from creation to use to storage to eventual disposal. Governance must ensure the enterprise manages this life cycle responsibly, because keeping data forever can increase legal and security risk, while deleting data too early can violate obligations and harm business operations. Lifecycle decisions include retention, which is how long information is kept, and disposition, which is how information is disposed of safely. These decisions are often driven by legal and regulatory requirements, but internal needs also matter, such as needing historical data for business analysis or customer support. Governance incorporates lifecycle management by defining retention rules, assigning ownership for those rules, and ensuring that systems and processes support consistent behavior. It also ensures that lifecycle rules are practical, because impractical rules encourage exceptions and unmanaged storage. Beginners might assume retention is simply a storage decision, but it is a governance decision because it affects legal exposure, privacy risk, and operational cost. Lifecycle management also affects audit readiness, because the enterprise must be able to show it retains required records and disposes of information responsibly. When the exam addresses record retention and evidence, it often expects you to connect these topics to information governance and IA. Information sharing and integration are where many enterprises accidentally create risk, because data moves across systems and teams in ways that are not always visible. Governance incorporates IA by establishing rules for how data can be shared, what approvals are needed, and what controls must apply when data moves. This includes decisions about who can access shared data, how access is reviewed, and how data quality is maintained when multiple systems consume the same information. It also includes decisions about integration patterns at a high level, because integration choices influence data consistency and security exposure. If teams create one-off connections without standards, the enterprise becomes fragile and difficult to audit, because nobody can confidently map where data flows. Governance does not need to dictate every integration detail, but it must ensure that data flows are managed and that sensitive information is protected as it moves. Beginners often think data sharing is always good because it reduces silos, but unmanaged sharing creates new problems, like privacy violations and inconsistent updates. IA provides the structure for safe and coherent sharing, and governance ensures that structure is followed. In scenario questions involving data leaks or inconsistent reporting across systems, uncontrolled sharing is often a root cause. Ownership and stewardship are critical because information architecture cannot function without human accountability. Governance must define who owns key information assets, meaning who is accountable for the meaning, quality expectations, and appropriate use of data. This ownership is often shared between business and IT because business stakeholders understand what the information means and how it should be used, while IT stakeholders manage how information is stored, moved, and protected. Governance also defines stewardship responsibilities, which include maintaining definitions, resolving data quality issues, and coordinating changes when processes evolve. Without ownership, data quality problems become endless blame cycles because nobody has the authority to enforce standards or to require remediation. Ownership also matters for access decisions because someone must have the responsibility to approve access based on legitimate business need. Beginners sometimes assume access is purely an IT security decision, but access is also a business decision because it determines who can use enterprise information and for what purpose. When governance assigns ownership, it makes accountability visible and enforceable, which is one of the central goals of GEIT. Exam scenarios that mention unclear data ownership or recurring data quality issues often point to missing stewardship and weak governance around information assets. A common beginner misunderstanding is thinking that information architecture is optional because the enterprise can fix data issues later. In reality, data issues become harder to fix over time because inconsistent definitions and uncontrolled flows become embedded into systems and processes. When an enterprise has many systems using different definitions, changing meaning can break reporting and operations, making the cost of correction high. Another misunderstanding is treating data quality as a technical problem that can be solved with a better tool, when many data quality issues come from unclear ownership, inconsistent processes, and missing governance standards. A third misunderstanding is believing that more data is always better, which can lead to collecting and storing information without clear purpose or control, increasing privacy and security risk. Governance incorporates IA to prevent these traps by ensuring data is defined, classified, and managed intentionally. It also ensures that data decisions are aligned with enterprise direction, such as focusing on information that supports key outcomes and avoiding unnecessary collection that increases risk. When you correct these misunderstandings, you can see IA as a proactive discipline that reduces long-term cost and improves trust in enterprise decisions. The exam often rewards this long-term perspective because governance is about sustainable enterprise capability, not short-term fixes. To keep information architecture aligned enterprise-wide, governance must integrate it into operating rhythm, not just into initial policy design. That means leaders periodically review key information standards, data quality indicators, major data-related risks, and significant changes that affect data meaning or flows. It also means that when new initiatives are planned, governance checks whether the initiative uses shared definitions, respects classification, and supports lifecycle rules rather than creating new isolated data islands. Exception handling matters here too, because sometimes a unique situation requires deviation, but deviations should be managed, justified, and time-bound to prevent permanent fragmentation. Over time, this rhythm supports continuous improvement because the enterprise learns where definitions are unclear, where data quality issues persist, and where standards need refinement. Governance also uses this rhythm to maintain credibility with external parties when evidence is needed, because consistent information governance supports consistent reporting and compliance. Beginners should see that IA is not static. It evolves as the enterprise evolves, but it must evolve in a controlled way to preserve trust. Incorporating IA into governance rhythm keeps alignment real, even as new systems and processes emerge. When exam questions describe drift in reporting or recurring data issues, strengthening the rhythm of information governance is often part of the solution. To close, incorporating information architecture so data decisions align enterprise-wide means treating information as an enterprise asset with consistent meaning, controlled handling, and clear ownership. IA provides shared definitions, classification standards, lifecycle rules, and guidance for safe data sharing so the enterprise can rely on its information for decision-making and operations. Governance integrates IA by assigning decision rights and stewardship, embedding information standards into planning and investment choices, and establishing oversight rhythms so data alignment does not drift over time. This approach improves value delivery because metrics become trustworthy, and it improves risk management because sensitive data is handled consistently and evidence can be produced when needed. When you can look at a data problem and ask whether meaning is consistent, ownership is clear, classification is applied, and lifecycle rules are followed, you are using governance reasoning rather than chasing technical symptoms. In the next episode, we will connect this alignment discipline to shared services, because governance becomes even more powerful when controls and standards can be reused consistently across the enterprise rather than rebuilt in every department.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.